Photo comments and the Comments API are an incredible duo to allow your users to give you photo feedback and then also use that feedback in a creative way in your room. This video is going to be a little bit longer than some of the others just because displaying the information from your comments is a little bit more complicated. But let's talk about the easy part first. We saw in Jason's introductory video yesterday that the ability to post photo comments is now live, and of the two, between photo comments and the Comments API, photo comments is definitely the easier. So if we jump into the room, the only thing that you need is something. In this case, I've selected the instant camera, and then inside of the instant camera, I have an on-click function that calls the instant photo method. And when we see what that looks like in the room, it should look familiar, that you now have the option to post a photo, and then you'll be able to add text to that photo and submit it as a comment to the room. So that is something that is pretty easy to implement and will allow you to get a lot of feedback that you can then view on your creator side in the view of your room. But the real powerful part of this is being able to get that information and then display it in your room. And so in order to do this, it's ideal to have one thing in your room that kind of handles all of the getting of the information. And in this particular instance, I've just selected the floppy disk, which there is already some code in that I will talk you through. So let's go into edit mode, click on the floppy disk, into the code editor, and let's talk about kind of what we have. And what we have right now is the sequence of code that is required to get the information for each of your comments so that it can then be displayed. So the first things we have here are we have a variable with the name comments, and that is set equal to 2 curly brackets. And this is just the variable in which we will store all of our comment information. And so not only each of the individual comments all grouped together, but each of the attributes of each of the comments as well. So in order to get the comments, we have to run kind of a two-part sequence here. We have to trigger the request to get the comments, and then we need to write the code in order to get and store the comments so that we can use them in the room. So inside of this on-click function, we have a method that says fetch comments that requires a callback function. And this line of code essentially says, hey, we want to get the comments, and the callback function, in this case, handle fetch, is the function that will do the getting of the comments. And so if we jump down to handle fetched, which is outside of our on-click function here, we need 2 arguments. The first of which are comments loaded, and this will be the variable in which we store the comment information, at least initially. And then we have a continuation token that's just continue token. And for the purposes of simplicity, this just ensures that you always get all of the comments for your room. Whenever we get into the next line of code, what we're going to do is we are going to assign the information from the argument comments loaded into our local variable comments. And that will just allow us to utilize the comments in a different function. Next, we want to do a little bit of prevention. And so this is some handling or some code that will prevent us trying to do something that we can't because of the amount of information that we have. So we have a conditional statement here that says if number sign comments loaded is greater than 0. This section of code right here, number comments loaded greater than 0, is essentially saying if the number of comments that we have for the room is greater than 0, then we can run the show comment method. This just prevents us from trying to run code that relies on comment information. If we don't have comment information, we don't want to run that particular code. And so what we're saying here is if we have comments, then we can run the show comment function. And so in this line, if we have comments greater than 0, then we can run the show comment for the first comment in our list of comments. So when we jump down to the show comment function, we have this word called index. And index is essentially the value that we will use to represent the number of the item in the list. And so in this case, 1 is an index, or the address, as some people call it, for the first comment in the list. And so 1 is for the first comment, 2 is for the second comment, so on and so forth. This line of code right here, line 13, is essentially another preventative mechanism that ensures that when we are trying to display a comment, it is of an index that actually exists. So if we only have 4 comments, we should not be trying to display a comment at index 5 because that index doesn't exist. And so line 13 is not something that you would really need to manipulate at all, but is something that you need to include. So now that we have ensured that we are going to try to display the information from a comment that actually exists, we need to assign a variable, so local comment, notice that it's singular, to information for a single comment. And so line 14 says, assign to the variable comment the information from the comment at a specific index, in this case we'll just use 1, from the comments list. And so this line of code, line 14, essentially says add to comment the information for a single comment, not all of the comments. And this will allow us to display all of the information from a single comment at the same time. We then have another kind of preventative measure here that says if there is no comment, then return end. That just bumps us out of this function. And the idea behind that is if we don't have comment information, then we can't display it. And if we try to display information that doesn't exist, then we'll get some errors. And so this just prevents errors from happening. At this point, which we've done a lot, we now have the information from a single comment stored in the variable called comment. And this is where we can look at the individual characteristics of a comment in order to display them. So what I want to do now is I want to display the photo from the first comment onto the media screen. So I'm going to say get thing, and I need to select, I think it's called photos, and this is the media display here. And then I want to run a method on that thing that says set media, and then we're going to say comment.photo. And what this means is we're going to set the media of this thing, the media panel, to the photo attribute of the comment that we are currently looking at. So if this is comment 1, this will display the photo associated with the first comment in our list. And so if we preview it, click on the floppy, we can then see that that photo is there. So we can look at displaying other attributes as well. And so I'm going to say the user, which is this panel right here, is going to be set text comment.author. And I think I forgot to change the text color. So I'm going to click check, go into play, and then view it from here. And so you can see, I apologize that it is faint, but you can see my username, which was the person who submitted this particular comment. And so I now am able to see the photo from that first comment, as well as the user who submitted it. The next thing that you might want to do is scroll through your comments, and that requires additional sets of code that I would like to cover in a separate video. And in that video, I will also talk about displaying the text and also the date and time.